My parents left me unconscious behind a glass ICU wall so they could catch a flight to Hawaii for my sister's wedding trip. And the only name in my visitor log night after night was a man I'd never met. Why would a stranger sit outside my hospital room for hours, pay a $139,000 bill in cash, and ask the staff to hide his identity? My name is Sylvia Alvarez. I'm 32 years old, and I work as Director of Operations at a fast-growing energy company in Austin. I'm the person who fixes problems before anyone else realizes there's a problem. I'm the one who makes sure the numbers match, the deadlines hold, and the chaos stays invisible. That's been my role at work. And, if I'm being honest, it's been my role in my family too. Because in my family, love has always sounded like a bill. Every Sunday, exactly at 6 p.m., my phone rings. Not because my mother wants to hear how I'm doing. Not because she misses me. Sundays are when Vivian Alvarez calls to update me on expenses, her voice soft and sweet in that special way she saves for requests. Sylvia, honey, she'll say. Like the word honey can turn anything into kindness. Your father's truck needs new tires. That's $480. And Brittany's wedding planner needs the deposit $2,200. Oh, and the electricity bill was higher this month. Can you send an extra $300? She says it like she's listing groceries, like it's normal, like my job as her daughter is to keep the family machine running with my bank account. That particular Sunday, I did the math while she kept talking. I always do. It's a coping mechanism, like counting breaths when you're trying not to cry. 480 plus 2,000, 200 plus 300, $2,980. On top of the $800 I already send every month. Mom, I said carefully. That's almost $3,000. I just sent money last week. And there it was, the shift. The sweetness sharpened just enough to remind me who held the emotional leash. You don't have a family to support, she said. No husband, no children. Brittany is getting married. She needs help. You make good money. What else are you spending it on? I wanted to say, my rent, my student loans, my savings for a home I'll never buy because I keep draining my account for you. I wanted to say, my life matters too, but I didn't. I never do. In my family, defending yourself gets labeled selfish. And selfishness is the one thing my mother doesn't tolerate. I'll transfer it, I said. Tonight. Good, she replied, relief in her voice like she'd just survived an emergency one she created. When we hung up, I opened the Excel file I've kept since I was 25. 7 years of records. Every dollar I'd sent home. Every emergency. Every loan. Every time I convinced myself this would be the last time. I scrolled to the bottom. I am, total, cent 4 cents. I sat there, staring at the number until my eyes went blurry. I earn $126,000 a year. After taxes, around $94,000. I'd been sending home an average of $26,771 per year, about 21% of my take-home income for 7 years. And the reason column wasn't medical bills or mortgage or unexpected hardship, it was almost always one word: Brittany. Brittany's car payment, Brittany's credit card, Brittany's apartment deposit, Brittany's vacation, Brittany's dental work, Brittany's designer bag she needed for a job interview. 90% of the entries carried my sister's name like a stamp that said, "Your purpose is to provide," as if my life existed to prop up hers. My phone buzzed. A text from Brittany, my younger sister, the family's sun, the center of every orbit. She sent a photo of a wedding dress, strapless lace, the kind you see in bridal boutiques with velvet couches and champagne glasses. The kind that doesn't belong in the same world as my stained work hoodie and cold desk coffee. "Isn't it gorgeous?" she wrote. "It's $4,800. Mom said you'd help with the dress. Also, I need $25,000 for the wedding fund. You're the maid of honor, so you should contribute more than anyone. 25,000. I stared at that number the way you stare at a crack in the ceiling after a storm, trying to decide whether it's just cosmetic or whether your whole house is about to collapse. I typed. I'll see what I can do. She replied, with a heart emoji. That heart emoji used to melt me. It used to make me feel like I was included. Now it looked like a receipt. Later that night, my mother called again, excited, talking fast like she was already living inside my sister's wedding photos. You're going to love Hawaii, she said. The resort has an infinity pool. Brittany found it on Instagram. I can't go, I said. The IPO is in 3 weeks. I can't leave. Oh, Sylvia, she sighed, like my career was a bad habit. You always have an excuse. Brittany wanted you there to help choose the venue. I thought this was a venue scouting trip, I said. Not the wedding. It is, she said quickly. But Brittany needs opinions. And since you're not coming, the least you can do is pay for the trip. Your father and I certainly can't afford it. Then she listed the costs like she'd been rehearsing: flights, resort, meals, tours. Total, vuit, dos, cents. The least you can do, she repeated. I transferred it that night, because I always did, because no felt like stepping off a cliff with no guarantee anyone would catch me. After the transfer, I checked my bank account. Balance: $4,230. And I did what I'd been doing for years. I started counting days like a prisoner, marking time on a wall. 18 days until the IPO. 18 days until my stock options vested. 18 days until I could breathe financially for the first time in my adult life. I just needed to survive 18 more days. Before bed, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and did something I'd done 1,000 times. Something I pretended wasn't a thought, but felt more like a question scratching at the inside of my skull. I compared myself to them. I'm 5'9". My mother is 5'4". My father is brown-eyed. My sister is brown-eyed. My mother is brown-eyed. I have blue eyes. My hair is lighter, turning almost blonde in summer. Everyone else in my family has hair so dark it looks nearly black indoors. When I was 16, I asked my mother why I looked different. She stared at me like I'd insulted her. What do you mean by that, Sylvia? She snapped. What exactly are you implying? I never asked again. In my family, questions were dangerous. Questions meant you didn't accept the role you'd been assigned. I turned off the bathroom light and told myself the same lie I always told myself. Just make it to the IPO. Then you'll finally have room to say no. And then, my email pinged. It was Reed, my CEO. Sylvia, timeline accelerated. IPO moved to November 28th. I need the operations audit complete by the 15th. You're the only one I trust with this. I read the date twice. November 28th. 2 weeks earlier than planned. My throat tightened. My heartbeat went uneven. 18 days just became 11. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Not fear of the work, not even fear of failing. Fear of what would happen to me if I kept doing what I always did. Because at that moment, I didn't know the next time I'd look at a screen, the words would start to swim. My fingers would stop listening. And my body, the body I'd been forcing to carry everyone else, would finally collapse. And, when it did, I didn't know who would come for me. The next weeks became a tunnel of fluorescent lights, cold coffee, and deadlines that didn't care if I was human. Our CFO quit without notice 3 weeks before the IPO. Reed didn't say it out loud, but the panic was everywhere in his emails, in the constant quick calls, in the way every problem somehow ended on my desk. Investor packages, compliance documents, due diligence reports, operations audits that had to be perfect. The kind of work where one mistake could cost millions and one missed deadline could collapse everything. I worked 16 hours a day, sometimes 18. I slept 4 hours, sometimes 3. I kept protein bars in my drawer because walking to the kitchen felt like wasting time I didn't have. My neck ached constantly. My jaw stayed clenched even when I wasn't thinking. The headache that started as a dull pressure behind my eyes became a steady throb I carried like background noise. At my last physical, my doctor had warned me. Your blood pressure is concerning for someone your age, he said. You need to slow down. I nodded like I listened. Then I went back to my life and did the opposite. Because slowing down wasn't just hard, it felt impossible. If I slowed down, the IPO risked failing. If the IPO failed, 40 employees could lose everything. If the IPO failed, my stock options wouldn't vest. And if my stock options didn't vest, I wouldn't just be tired. I'd be trapped. I kept telling myself, just hold on. 11 more days. 10, 9. And then my family kept calling, as if my body wasn't already screaming. My mother didn't ask if I was sleeping. She asked if I'd transferred the money yet. Brittany didn't ask how my IPO prep was going. She asked if I'd thought about the $25K. Every time I saw their names on my phone, I felt the familiar combination of dread and reflex. Like my nervous system had learned that love was a test, and I had to pass it with a bank transfer. On the third night in a row of barely sleeping, I stood in my kitchen staring at my hands, wondering why they were shaking. I drank water. It didn't help. I ate a protein bar. It tasted like cardboard. My head felt too full, like my skull couldn't contain it. But I still went back to my desk. Because that's what I do. I handle things. I fix them. I keep going. The headache became a pounding drum 3 days before I collapsed. I blamed dehydration, stress, tension, anything but the truth, because the truth would mean admitting I wasn't invincible, and invincibility was the only value my family ever rewarded. At 11:47 p.m., I was still working. I remember the glow of my laptop screen, the cursor blinking on an unfinished sentence. I remember thinking, just send this email, just finish this line. My vision blurred, the words swam, the letters rearranged themselves into nonsense. I reached for my water bottle. My hand missed. I tried again. My fingers wouldn't cooperate. A strange calm washed over me, like my brain had stepped back and watched my body malfunction with detached confusion. I thought, I should call someone. I reached for my phone. My arm didn't move. I tried to stand. The floor rushed up. The security guard later told me the hallway camera caught it, me collapsing at my desk like a puppet with its strings cut. He found me at 11:52 p.m. He called 911. He stayed with me until the paramedics arrived, talking to me even though I couldn't answer, because he said he didn't want me to be alone. By 12:03 a.m., I was in an ambulance. By 1:15 a.m., I was in the emergency room at St. David's Medical Center. Diagnosis: hemorrhagic stroke. The ER doctor called my emergency contact my mother at 1:15 a.m. No answer. Again at 1:47. No answer. Again at 2:30. No answer. Again at 5:45. No answer. At 7 a.m., she finally picked up. I don't remember any of that. I don't remember the ambulance. I don't remember the ER. I don't remember being scanned, intubated, or moved into the ICU. My memory is just blank space where those hours should be. But the hospital has notes, and nurses remember things like this. They put me in ICU room 4, 12 glass walls facing the hallway, monitors beeping in steady rhythm, fluorescent lights that never truly turned off. The kind of place where time doesn't feel real, and your body becomes a file number and a set of vitals. My parents live in Round Rock, about 25 minutes away. They arrived at 9:30 a.m. They stayed for 33 minutes. 33 minutes. I didn't know that then, but Amanda, the ICU nurse, told me later. She'd been doing this for 11 years. She'd seen families camp out in hallways for days, sleeping in chairs, refusing to leave. She'd seen people hold hands through ventilators, whispering prayers into hairlines. My family did none of that. Brittany didn't come into my room. She sat in the hallway, scrolling through her phone, complaining that the hospital smell made her nauseous. My father stood in the corridor making phone calls. Not to check on me, just phone calls, paced and distracted, like he'd wandered into the wrong building and couldn't wait to leave. My mother spoke with Dr. Rodriguez for 11 minutes. Then she came into my room, looked at me, tubes everywhere, eyes closed, and checked her watch. At 10:03 a.m., they left. What happened next is the part that still makes my chest tighten, even now. Amanda overheard my mother in the hallway before she left. The doctor said she's stable, my mother told someone, probably Brittany. Stable means not dying right now, right? We can still make the flight. The tickets are non-refundable. Sylvia paid for them. The doctor had actually said, stable, but critical. We need to monitor her for 72 hours minimum. There's still risk of secondary complications. My mother heard the word stable and ignored the rest. By 3:15 p.m., while I lay unconscious in room 412, she left me a voicemail. 14 seconds. Sylvia, honey, the doctor said you're stable. Your father and I and Brittany have to go to Hawaii like we planned. The tickets are non-refundable. I'll call the hospital every day to check on you. You just rest, okay? Brittany needs me for this trip. We'll be back next week. She didn't say she loved me. She didn't say she was scared. She didn't say she was sorry. She said Brittany needed her. At 6 and 2:08 p.m. Brittany posted an Instagram story at the Austin airport, my mother smiling, my father looking tired, Brittany flashing a peace sign. Caption: Hawaii, here we come. And within the first hour, 127 people saw it, including one person none of them expected. Because at 8 p.m., a man walked into Street David's Medical Center. He went to the front desk and asked for me by name. Sylvia Alvarez, he said. Room 412. The receptionist asked if he was family. He said yes. She asked for his name. He said, Walter Kendrick. He got a visitor badge. He took the elevator to the 4th floor. He walked down the hallway until he reached the glass door of ICU room 412. And then he stopped. He didn't knock. He didn't demand to go in. He didn't make a scene. He just stood there, staring through the glass. For 3 hours, as if he was afraid he didn't deserve to cross that line. As if being close to me was all he was allowed to do. And while my family was boarding a plane to Hawaii, I lay unconscious behind glass, believing I was alone, while a stranger stood guard outside my door, like my life mattered to him more than it did to the people who raised me. I didn't know any of that yet. But something tells me, even in the dark space of coma and silence, my body knew one thing. Someone had shown up, and whoever he wasn't there by accident. When I finally woke up, the first thing I felt was pain. Not the sharp kind that makes you gasp, but a deep, heavy ache that seemed to live inside my bones. My body felt foreign, like I had borrowed it from someone else, and it hadn't quite learned how to move again. The second thing I noticed was the silence. Hospitals aren't truly quiet. Machines beep softly, footsteps echo in the hallway, but the chair beside my bed was empty. That emptiness felt louder than anything. No family, no flowers, no one leaning over me saying my name. Just the steady rhythm of the heart monitor and the faint hum of fluorescent lights above my head. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. My mind moved slowly, like it had to push through fog. I turned my head slightly and saw the glass wall that separated my ICU room from the hallway. A nurse's station sat across the corridor, glowing under bright lights. Then the memories began to return in fragments. The email from Reed. The numbers on my screen. The water bottle slipping out of my hand. The floor rushing up toward me. My throat burned when I tried to speak. A nurse appeared beside my bed almost instantly, like she had been watching for the exact moment I woke up. Her name tag read Amanda. Well, look at that, she said gently, relief in her voice. Welcome back, Sylvia. My voice came out rough and weak. How long? 5 days, she said. You've been unconscious for 5 days. 5 days. The number felt unreal, like someone had stolen nearly a week of my life and hidden it somewhere I couldn't reach. You had a hemorrhagic stroke, Amanda continued softly. Then there were some complications, but the surgery went well. You're stable now. Stable. The same word my mother had used in that voicemail I hadn't heard yet. My eyes drifted toward the chair beside my bed again. Still empty. Where's my family? I asked. Amanda paused, and it was such a small pause most people might not have noticed it. But when you grow up learning to read the smallest shifts in people's expressions, you see everything. They're traveling right now, she said carefully. But they called the hospital a few times to check on you. Traveling. The word floated there between us like something fragile. Hawaii, she added quietly, as if honesty was easier than letting me guess. I stared at the ceiling for a long moment. Of course they were. Brittany's trip. The one I paid for. My chest tightened, but I was too exhausted for anger. All I felt was a dull, tired understanding. That was when I noticed something strange on the small table beside my bed. A glass of water, a folded blanket, and a book. I frowned slightly. That's not mine. Amanda followed my gaze and smiled faintly. No, she said. It isn't. She walked over and picked up the book, placing it gently in my hands. It was a hardcover copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. The edges were slightly worn, like it had been read many times. I've never read this, I murmured. Amanda leaned against the counter near the bed, watching me carefully. That came from someone who's been visiting you, she said. My brow furrowed. Visiting? She nodded. A man. The words made my pulse quicken slightly, though I wasn't sure why. My dad? I asked automatically. Amanda shook her head. No, she said. Not the one listed in your file. Something about the way she said that made the air in the room feel colder. He came every night while you were unconscious, she continued. Usually around 8 o'clock, he'd sit outside your room for hours. Outside? I repeated. At first he wouldn't come in, she explained. Just stood by the glass door and watched, like he didn't want to disturb you. I tried to imagine it, a stranger standing there in the hallway, staring through the glass at a woman he didn't know. Did he say who he was? I asked. Amanda hesitated before answering. He told the front desk he was your father. The word father landed heavily in my chest. My father's name is Gilbert Alvarez, I said slowly. Amanda gave a small nod. Yes, she said. That's why we were confused. She reached for the tablet mounted near the wall and tapped the screen. This is the visitor log, she explained. She handed it to me. My hands trembled slightly as I scrolled. The entries were simple, just names and times. November 18, Walter Kendrick, 8 p.m., 11:12 p.m. November 19, Walter Kendrick, 7:45 p.m., 11:30 p.m. November 20, Walter Kendrick, 7:30 p.m., 10:15 p.m. November 21, Walter Kendrick, 7 p.m., 11:45 p.m. November 22, Walter Kendrick, 7:10 p.m., 11:20 p.m. Night after night. The same name, and no one else. Not my mother. Not my father. Not Brittany. Just Walter Kendrick. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of a name that meant absolutely nothing to me. Who is he? I whispered. Amanda shook her head slightly. We didn't know at first, she admitted. But the second night he came in for a while. What did he do? I asked. She smiled faintly, remembering. Honestly, she said, not much. She pulled the chair closer to my bed and sat down. He just looked at you. I blinked. Looked at me? For almost an hour, she said. Didn't touch you, didn't speak loudly, just stood there beside your bed. Amanda's voice softened. Once, I walked in to check your vitals and I heard him whisper something. I couldn't make out most of it, but I did hear one sentence. My heart beat faster. What did he say? She met my eyes. He said, "You're stronger than you know. I've always known that." A strange warmth spread through my chest, confusion mixed with something else I couldn't quite name. Then another thought struck me. Amanda, I said slowly. How did the hospital approve surgery? She tilted her head. What do you mean? I don't remember signing anything, I said. And my mother, I didn't finish the sentence. Amanda understood anyway. Her expression grew more serious. Well, she said carefully, someone handled the billing. My stomach tightened. How much was it? She hesitated. Your ICU stay, the surgery, medications. The total was around $139,000. The number echoed in my mind. $139,000. I closed my eyes briefly. My insurance doesn't cover that much, I murmured. No, Amanda said quietly. It doesn't. I opened my eyes again. So who paid it? Amanda looked toward the hallway for a moment before answering. The same man who kept visiting you. My breath caught. He paid the entire balance, she continued. In full. My mind struggled to process it. A stranger. A name I'd never heard before. Paying $139,000 to save my life. Did he say why? I asked. Amanda shook her head. He only asked for two things, she said. What things? That the hospital keep his identity private, she replied. And that we let him know the moment you woke up. My fingers tightened around the book in my lap. The room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls had moved closer. Have you seen him today? I asked quietly. Amanda glanced at the clock on the wall. It's almost 8. Right on cue. Footsteps echoed faintly in the hallway outside. Amanda looked toward the glass door, then back at me. He usually arrives about now. My pulse began to pound harder against my ribs. For 5 nights, this man had been here. Watching. Waiting. Protecting someone who didn't even know his name. Amanda stood up slowly. He's out there, she said softly. I turned my head toward the glass wall. At the far end of the corridor, a tall man with silver hair had just stepped off the elevator. He paused for a moment, looking down the hallway like someone gathering courage. Then he started walking toward my room. And for the first time since I woke up, the chair beside my bed might not stay empty much longer. But the question echoing in my mind was louder than anything else. Why would a stranger care enough to save my life, unless he wasn't a stranger at all? Once you start noticing the cracks in your life, it becomes impossible to pretend the wall is still whole. Lying there in that hospital bed, weak and stitched back together by machines and medicine, I kept replaying the past in slow motion. All the moments that once seemed ordinary now felt like clues I had ignored for years. The money, the guilt, the way my mother always sounded warm when she needed something, and distant the moment I needed anything in return. I thought about Brittany's heart emoji after asking me for $25,000. I thought about the 14-second voicemail. And the more I thought about it, the clearer one thing became. My life had been built around proving my usefulness to people who never once proved their love. Amanda returned later that afternoon with a clipboard and a cup of water. She moved carefully around the machines connected to my arms, checking numbers on the monitor. You're doing well, she said. Your blood pressure looks much better today. I nodded weakly, but my mind was still somewhere else. Amanda, I said after a moment. What happened while I was unconscious? She paused slightly, like someone deciding how much truth a person was ready to hear. There was another complication, she said gently. My stomach tightened. What kind? Inflammation around your heart, she explained. Your body reacted strongly after the stroke. The doctors needed to perform emergency surgery. I blinked at her. Surgery? She nodded. It happened on the 3rd night. A cold feeling slid down my spine. Did my parents approve it? I asked quietly. Amanda hesitated. The hospital called your emergency contact several times, she said. My mother. Yes. And? Amanda let out a slow breath. She answered the call, Amanda said carefully. But she wasn't here. I already knew where this was going. Hawaii, I said flatly. Amanda nodded once. She answered from there. I could actually hear waves in the background. I closed my eyes. It was strange how little that surprised me. What did she say? I asked. Amanda looked uncomfortable. She asked how serious the surgery was. That sounds reasonable, I said. Amanda gave me a small, sad smile. That wasn't her first question. My chest tightened. What was? Amanda looked directly at me. She asked how much it would cost. The words hit me harder than the diagnosis ever had. The hospital had estimated $45,000 for the procedure. That was the number the billing department gave her. My mother's response, according to Amanda, was immediate. Send the bill to Sylvia, she had said. Amanda told me she had actually repeated the situation just to make sure my mother understood. Ma'am, Amanda said she told her. Your daughter is in a coma. She cannot approve payments right now, but my mother apparently sounded calm. She has savings, she replied. Sylvia always figures things out. Then, she hung up. Amanda didn't say anything else after that. She didn't need to, because the silence filled in the rest. The hospital still needed authorization. The surgery still had to happen quickly. Doctors couldn't just wait while someone's heart was under stress. So the billing department contacted the only person who had asked to be notified if my condition changed. Walter Kendrick. That name again. According to Amanda, the hospital staff expected hesitation. Most people pause when they hear numbers like that. But Walter didn't. The first thing he asked was simple. How fast can the surgery happen? When the billing manager explained the deposit requirement, he said only one word: done. Within the hour, the hospital received a wire transfer for $139,000, enough to cover not just the surgery, but the entire ICU stay and additional treatment. Amanda said the memo line on the payment was short. Patient care, no publicity, no explanation, no request for recognition. Just the quiet act of making sure I didn't die while my family was on a beach. The surgery happened that night. And every night afterward, Walter Kendrick returned to the hospital. Amanda told me something that stayed with me long after she said it. In 11 years working in ICU, she said, I've seen families fall apart under pressure. I've seen strangers abandon each other the moment things got hard. She paused. But I've never seen someone sit outside a glass door the way he did. She explained that the first night after the surgery, Walter arrived around 8 o'clock. He stood outside my room for several minutes before walking in. Then he stopped again. He looked uncertain, Amanda said, like he didn't know if he belonged there. So he sat down in the chair outside the room instead. For 3 hours. Watching, not touching anything, not interrupting the nurses, just sitting there quietly, his eyes fixed on the monitors that tracked my heartbeat. Once, Amanda walked past and asked if he wanted to come inside. He shook his head. I just want to make sure she's not alone, he said. That sentence echoed in my mind long after Amanda finished speaking. Not alone. It was strange how those two words felt heavier than the surgery, heavier than the bill, heavier than the stroke itself, because the truth was, most of my life had been spent feeling exactly that. Alone, even inside a family. I asked Amanda something that had been bothering me since I woke up. Did he say anything about me? She nodded slowly. Only once. What did he say? Amanda smiled faintly. He asked if you still liked the color blue. The question caught me off guard. Blue? He said when you were little, everything you owned was blue. Your backpack, your notebooks, even your bicycle. My chest tightened. Because that was true. But it wasn't something most people would know. Certainly not a stranger. Amanda watched my reaction carefully. Do you know him? She asked gently. I shook my head. At least, I thought I didn't. But something deep inside me felt like a door had just cracked open. Later that evening, I called Reed, my CEO, from the hospital phone. Reed, I said, who is Walter Kendrick? There was a long silence on the other end. You met him? Reed asked cautiously. Not yet. Another pause. Sylvia. Kendrick Capital is our largest investor. My heart skipped. You're kidding. No, Reed said. He owns 12% of the company. I stared at the ceiling. Did he say why he was asking about me? Reed exhaled slowly. He didn't explain much, but the night you collapsed, he called me before anyone else did. What? He asked which hospital you were being taken to, Reed said. My fingers tightened around the phone. How would he even know I collapsed? That's what I asked, Reed admitted quietly. The room felt suddenly smaller. Reed, I said slowly. Did he seem worried? Reed didn't hesitate. He sounded terrified. After the call ended, I stared at the book in my lap again. Meditations. Inside the front cover, written in neat handwriting, was a short message I hadn't noticed earlier, to my daughter. I hope one day you'll understand why I stayed away. V.K. My breath caught. Daughter. The word sat there on the page like a truth waiting 32 years to be spoken. I looked toward the glass wall again. Down the hallway, I could see the elevator doors opening. A tall man stepped out. Silver hair. Calm postura. Blue eyes. The exact shade as mine. And as he slowly walked toward my room, I realized something that made my heart pound harder than any hospital machine. My mother hadn't just abandoned me in the ICU. She had abandoned a secret. And that secret was walking toward my hospital bed right now. 7 days after my surgery, my mother finally returned from Hawaii. I didn't see her arrive, but Amanda told me everything later, and the hospital security cameras filled in the rest like silent witnesses. By then, I had learned that hospitals remember details most people wish they could forget: times, signatures, visitor badges, Every person who walks through those sliding doors. Vivian Alvarez walked into Street David's medical center like nothing had happened. Amanda said she looked relaxed, sun-tanned. Her hair still perfectly styled from vacation, wearing a bright floral dress that probably belonged on a beach instead of a hospital hallway. She even carried a duty-free shopping bag from the airport, like someone who had just returned from a pleasant trip rather than leaving her daughter in critical condition. She approached the front desk and said, calmly, "I'm here for my daughter, Sylvia Alvarez, room 412. The receptionist pulled up the file. "I need to sign her discharge paperwork," my mother added. Not, "How is she?" Not, "Can I see her?" Just paperwork. The receptionist glanced at the screen and said politely, "Let me check the account status first." My mother frowned. "Account status?" "Yes, ma'am, billing." She waved her hand dismissively. "Just send the bill to Sylvia's address," she said. "She makes good money. She can handle it." Amanda told me the receptionist paused when she read the file. Then she looked back at my mother. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "the account has already been settled." My mother blinked. "Settled?" she repeated. "Yes." "By insurance?" "No, ma'am." The reception turned the monitor slightly. "A family member made a direct payment. The balance was paid in full." My mother leaned forward slightly. "How much?" $139,000. Amanda said the color drained from my mother's face instantly. "Who paid it?" she asked. "I'm sorry," the receptionist replied, but the donor requested privacy. For a moment my mother didn't speak. Then something shifted in her expression, like a memory she had been trying to bury, suddenly crawled back into the light. "Let me see the visitor log," she said. The receptionist hesitated, but handed over the tablet. My mother scrolled. November 18, Walter Kendrick. November 19, Walter Kendrick. November 20, Walter Kendrick. November 21, Walter Kendrick. November 22, Walter Kendrick. November 23, Walter Kendrick. Night after night. One name. And none of ours. Amanda told me my mother's hands started shaking. The tablet slipped from her fingers and hit the floor. She didn't pick it up. She just stared at the screen like someone who had just seen a ghost. "Walter," she whispered. The name came out like a confession. Amanda said my mother looked suddenly older, like the weight of something she had carried for decades had finally become visible. Without another word, she turned and walked down the hallway toward the ICU wing. At the corner near my room, the hallway opened up just enough to see the row of glass doors that separated the patients from the rest of the world. And sitting in the chair outside my room, exactly where he had been every night that week, was Walter Kendrick. He was wearing the same calm expression I had noticed the night before when he first entered my room. A gray suit jacket hung neatly over the back of the chair, and a laptop rested closed on his lap. When he looked up and saw my mother, he didn't look surprised. If anything, he looked tired. They stared at each other across the hallway for several seconds. 32 years of history stood silently between them. My mother spoke first. "Walter." Her voice barely carried down the hallway. Walter stood slowly, straightening his jacket before answering. "Vivian." He said her name evenly, without anger, without warmth, just recognition. Amanda said she watched the whole thing from the nurse's station. My mother tried to speak again, but her voice faltered. You've been here." Walter didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced toward my hospital room, then back at her. "For 7 nights," he said quietly. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything else in the hallway. Finally, my mother forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Walter's expression didn't change. "I should have been here 32 years ago." Amanda said the words landed like a dropped glass. My mother's shoulders stiffened. "You don't get to show up now and pretend." "I'm not pretending," Walter interrupted. His voice stayed calm, but there was something sharp underneath it. "You left her here." My mother's eyes flashed. "I didn't leave her," she snapped. "The doctors said she was stable." Walter tilted his head slightly. "Stable enough for a vacation?" My mother looked away. "That trip was important for Brittany." Walter's jaw tightened. "Your daughter was dying behind that glass door," he said, "and you were on a beach." The hallway had grown quieter by then, Nurses slowed their steps as they passed, pretending not to listen. My mother crossed her arms. "You don't understand our family." Walter's eyes darkened. "You're right," he said. Then he added quietly, "Because she never had one." Amanda said the words made her chest tighten, even though she barely knew me. My mother looked like she might say something else, but the elevator doors opened at the far end of the hall and a nurse called for assistance in another room. The moment broke. Without another word, my mother walked toward my hospital door. When she stepped inside, the room suddenly felt smaller. I was sitting up in bed, still weak but alert, watching the monitors flicker beside me. For a second she just stared. "Sylvia," she said quickly, forcing a smile. "You're awake." Her voice sounded too bright, like someone trying to cover up the truth with volume. "How are you feeling?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I looked past her toward the hallway. Through the glass wall, I could see Walter still standing there, waiting. Then I looked back at my mother. "Mom," I said quietly. She stepped closer to the bed. "Yes, honey?" I held her gaze. "The man outside." Her face tightened slightly. "What about him? The one who's been visiting every night?" She didn't say anything. "Is he my father?" The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights above us. My mother's lips parted, but no words came out. Her eyes filled with tears. "Sylvia, it's complicated." I felt something inside me shift. All the years of questions I had buried suddenly rushed back to the surface. The mirror comparisons, the blue eyes, the scholarship that appeared out of nowhere when I was 19. "Is Walter Kendrick my father?" I asked again. My mother looked down at the floor. And then she started crying. "It was a long time ago," she whispered. "I was young. I made mistakes." Mistakes. The word felt hollow. I glanced again at the glass door. Walter was still there. Not moving, not interrupting, just waiting. And suddenly, the entire shape of my life began to rearrange itself. Because the man who had shown up every night, the man who had paid my hospital bills, the man who had stood outside the glass like he didn't deserve to come closer, might not be a stranger at all. He might be the truth my mother had hidden for 32 years. Something changes inside you after you almost die. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. There's no sudden burst of anger or heroic music like in the movies. It's quieter than that. It's the moment you realize you can't keep begging for love from people who have already decided you're only worth what you give them. My mother was still crying beside my hospital bed when that realization finally settled into my chest. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Her shoulders were shaking slightly, her hands covering her face, as if the tears could somehow erase the words she had just said. But I wasn't looking at her anymore. I was looking at the glass door. Walter Kendrick was still standing in the hallway, exactly where he had been since my mother walked in. He hadn't moved closer. He hadn't tried to interrupt the conversation. He was just waiting. The same way he had waited every night that week. 32 years. That thought landed differently now. 32 years of distance. 32 years of silence. 32 years of watching a life from the outside. And somehow, he was still here. I turned back to my mother. "Mom," I said quietly. She wiped her eyes quickly and forced a weak smile. "Yes, Sylvia?" I took a slow breath. "You can go now." She blinked, confused. "What?" "You heard me." The words came out calm, almost gentle. But they felt stronger than anything I had ever said to her before. "You should go." Her face tightened immediately. "Sylvia, I know you're upset right now. You've been through a lot. And the medication—" "No," I said softly. "I'm clear. Probably clearer than I've ever been." She stared at me as if trying to recognize a stranger wearing her daughter's face. "You can't mean that," she whispered. I looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time in years. The woman who had raised me. The woman whose approval I had chased for most of my life. The woman I had sent nearly $200,000 to because I believed family meant sacrifice. "I paid your bills," I said slowly. "I funded your vacations. I helped Brittany build the life she wanted. And when I was lying in this room fighting to stay alive, you chose a plane ticket over me." Her lips trembled. "That's not fair," she said weakly. I nodded toward the door. "You left." She opened her mouth to argue again, but no words came out. Because the truth didn't leave space for excuses. Finally, she whispered, "Brittany needed me." And somehow, that sentence hurt less than it used to. Because, for the first time in my life, I understood something simple. Brittany had always needed her. And I had always been the one expected to need nothing. I exhaled slowly. "You should tell Gilbert the truth," I said quietly. "He deserves to know." Her head snapped up. "Sylvia. And Brittany isn't getting $25,000, I added. Her eyes widened. "You promised." "No," I interrupted gently. "I said I'd see what I could do." She stared at me like the ground had just disappeared beneath her feet. For years, my answer had always been the same: yes. And now it wasn't. "I can't do this right now," she whispered finally. "I know," I said. She looked around the room like she might find support somewhere on the machines, on the walls, anywhere except the place where she had lost control. But there was nothing left to hold on to. Slowly, she turned toward the door. When she reached it, she hesitated for a moment. Then she walked out. Her footsteps faded down the hallway. And just like that, 32 years of obligation walked out with her. The room grew quiet again. For a moment I just sat there, staring at the glass wall. Then the door opened softly. Walter stepped inside. He stopped a few feet from the bed, leaving enough distance that I could decide what happened next. Up close, he looked older than I expected, but not fragile. There was a steadiness about him, like someone who had spent a lifetime learning patience. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I don't know where to start," he said. His voice was deeper than I expected, calm but carrying a weight of emotion underneath. I gestured toward the chair beside my bed. "You can start by sitting down." He looked surprised. But he nodded and slowly pulled the chair closer. It was the same chair that had been empty when I woke up. Now it wasn't. "I'm sorry," he said quietly once he sat down. The words caught me off guard. "For what?" "For staying away," he replied. His eyes moved briefly to the glass door behind him. "For 32 years I stood outside your life the same way I stood outside this room, close enough to see you, not close enough to be part of it." I didn't interrupt. He continued slowly, choosing his words carefully. "When your mother told me she was pregnant, I was a junior engineer with no money and a job that was about to send me overseas for 2 years. She believed you deserved stability. I believed I'd come back and fix everything." He paused. "But life doesn't pause while people figure things out." "What happened?" I asked quietly. "She married Gilbert," Walter said simply. I nodded. That part I already knew. "I tried to contact her again years later," he continued. "But she made it clear she didn't want me involved. Said it would confuse you. Said you had a family." His expression tightened slightly. "So I stayed away." The room felt still. "But you didn't disappear," I said. He shook his head. "No." He gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. I watched from a distance. He told me about my high school graduation. He had stood in the back of the auditorium. My college graduation, he watched the live stream online. The scholarship that appeared during my sophomore year. "That was you?" I asked. He nodded. "I didn't want to interfere with your life. I just wanted to make sure you had opportunities." My chest tightened. "And Everett?" I asked. His smile widened slightly. "When I saw your name on the employee list 3 years ago, I invested in the company." I blinked. "You invested because of me?" He shrugged lightly. "I told my partners the business looked promising," which was true. Then he added quietly, "But the real reason was you." I looked down at my overwhelmed by the strange mixture of emotions swirling inside me. "And the hospital bill?" I asked after a moment. His answer came without hesitation. "You were dying." That was it. No speech. No dramatic explanation. Just 3 simple words. "You don't owe me anything," he added quickly. "Not a relationship, not forgiveness, not even a conversation. If you want me to leave and never contact you again, I will." He met my eyes. "But if you're willing, I'd like the chance to know my daughter." The word daughter landed gently between us. Not as a demand, as a hope. For a moment, I didn't trust myself to speak. Because the truth was, my whole life I believed love was something you had to earn. By sacrificing. By giving. By proving your worth over and over again. But the man sitting beside my hospital bed had done something none of my family had ever done. He showed up. Not once. Every night. Even when he believed he didn't have the right to step inside. I reached out slowly and placed my hand on the edge of the chair. "You already know me a little," I said quietly. He looked confused. "How?" I smiled faintly. "You knew I liked blue." For the first time since he walked in, Walter laughed softly. A few weeks later, I walked out of the hospital. Walter drove me home. The ride was quiet, but not uncomfortable. 32 years of missed conversations don't need to be rushed into one afternoon. The IPO went forward. Everid went public. My stock options finally vested. Brittany's wedding never happened. Without my contribution, the plans collapsed, and the engagement quietly ended. My mother left several voicemails. I deleted them without listening, because the most important lesson I learned lying in that ICU bed wasn't about betrayal. It was about choice. Family isn't defined by DNA. Family is defined by who stands outside the glass door when your life is on the line. And when I looked back at that hallway in my memory, I realized something I had never understood before. For the first time in my life, the right person had been standing on the right side of the door. When I look back on everything that happened, from the hospital bed to the visitor log to the truth that had been hidden for 32 years, I realize this story was never really about betrayal alone. It was about seeing people clearly for the first time. Sometimes the people we spend our whole lives trying to please are the ones who never truly see us. And sometimes the person who quietly stands outside the door, asking for nothing, is the one who has cared the most all along. This story reminds us of something simple but powerful. Family is not defined by who raised you or who shares your last name. Family is defined by who shows up when you are at your weakest. The people who stay, who protect you, who refuse to let you face the hardest moments alone, those are the people who truly belong in your life. If this story made you pause, reflect, or feel something deep inside, then thank you for listening all the way through. Stories like this remind us that behind every quiet person, every difficult family, and every hidden truth, there is often a journey of healing waiting to unfold. And if you enjoy emotional stories like this, stories about truth, resilience, and unexpected love, please consider subscribing to Revenge Truth Vault. Your support helps this channel continue sharing powerful stories that remind us we are never as alone as we sometimes believe.